What's good, big dogs? Welcome back into the BDGE Dynasty channel. My name's Adam, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you go down, hit that like button, and more importantly, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content that we're bringing to you here on the game of Dynasty every single week. And speaking here of weeks, right? We're just 2 weeks. Today's Thursday, 2 weeks removed from the NFL draft actually happening in 2025. Not sure about you, but I'm hype. I'm ready for the NFL draft to happen, take place, see where some of these young, promising players are going to go. That's what I'm trying to do, is get prepped and ready to see where these guys are actually going to land on some of my dynasty teams. And this is, at this point of the year, one of the easiest ways for me to think about and really go ahead and do the exercise. Make sure I'm prepped and ready for the rookie drafts that I have in all my different leagues. At this point, a few of the leagues that I'm in, we actually go ahead and do the rookie draft ahead of the NFL draft. It gives it a little bit more of a lottery ticket type feel, if you will, right? Some of the players that you're really high on and bullish on in this draft process, going ahead and planting your flag on that player and seeing if the draft capital actually lines up with where you think they may be, and their draft stock may rise accordingly. You'll get a value bump. And then also on the flip side, you may end up seeing a flop, someone that you really thought highly of that doesn't get the draft capital. They could go down. But the point of this video isn't to talk about doing your rookie draft before the NFL draft. I'm just letting you know that at this point, right around now, if not probably a week or so before this, I'm really going through all my different leagues, all my different teams, and I'm doing what I call my prep work going into the rookie draft. And basically what I'm trying to do here is make sure I'm in the best position in my own mind going into these rookie drafts so that I'm getting the most out of it. If I want to actually make a move and trade some of the picks away, make sure I give myself the opportunity to do that. I'm not just going into this and then all of a sudden it's, the day of the draft and my pick's about to be on the clock. Now I'm on the clock. I haven't really thought about what I want to do with my pick, and I'll just go ahead and make the draft selection, and now I have these draft picks on my team. Maybe that's what you want to do. And I'm not saying that you can't do that, but for me at least, I want to make sure that I haven't basically left something on the table before actually making the draft selection, making that 106 pick in theory, right? Travion Henderson, whatever it's going to be, actually making that selection a player, making sure that there's not something I'd rather do and try to do in the process before I make the draft pick, or just, basically if I don't have any picks, bow out of having a first or second or third round pick in this draft. So what I'm going to do here is actually go through with you a few of my teams. I'm going to look at 2 teams right now that are lineup start 9 and start 10. A little more of the shallow league formats right now. So this will be Superflex, start 9 and start 10. And if you guys do like this format and you enjoy it, I can probably get into some of my other teams where there's longer starting rosters, so on and so forth. But for now, let's go ahead. We'll start with a BDGE league here. This is going to be Fade the Fetal. Now, this league is a lineup start 10, and it's a BDGE league. Nick's in the league, Tony's in the league, Guts in the league. It's a lot of fun. I love this league. But this is my team currently as constructed, and I feel a whole lot better about my team this offseason at this point than I did a full year ago. Actually, Tony, go ahead and, if you could, link that video below. Look at a year ago, the transformation I made in my team. I made 5 trades in the offseason about this point last year. In the 2024 offseason, I just was looking to go ahead and get my team turned into a contender. I have done that, and this year I did end up making the playoffs, but I lost in the semifinals and ended up earning the 109 pick. So with this team right now, I feel a lot better about it, and it looks good, but it's time to, again, look at the process and how do I get myself actually over that hump into the championship game for this coming up year. When I take a look, right, this is the situation that I have in front of me, and what I like to do at this point when I'm kind of prep working my different teams, all my teams that I'm looking at going into the rookie draft, I want to look at the whole picture from top to bottom. What I like to do first is just take a look at the roster construction of my team. It's real easy to just, look over your roster and just say, how do you feel about it? I'll just say this. For me anyway, a lot of times I've found that in the past, I may have certain player biases that I'm kind of looking at my team and not being, just true to the format and the way that I want to team build overall. I'm not saying you can't have your favorite players, but if you kind of just go into it and think your favorite players are always going to do well, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that maybe you're the lucky one, but for me, I'll have plenty of my favorite players disappoint. Let's call it what it is. So when we're looking at this team, right, instead of just looking at it from the players that I have in front of me, I'm looking at the roster construction that I have and want to have for the team. So when I look at this league, we're starting 10 players. It's super flex. We also start 3 receivers, and then you have 2 flex, 2 running backs, a tight end, and then we have 32 overall bench spots. And the way that I want to build my team in this type of a league format, and again, the roster construction and how you want to optimally team build these numbers are subject to change for you, but this is the way that I think about it in this type of a format. And the quarterbacks, how many quarterbacks do I want to have on my team that I truly consider actual quarterbacks, right? Like someone that should be at minimum a fringe starter or higher would be someone that I would consider in this range. So like Danny Dimes is on my team currently, right? But I wouldn't consider him that, even though there might be a chance that he ends up starting some games for Anthony Richardson if things don't go well for the Colts. I'm not considering him part of my stable and quarterback stable, right, in this team. So point is, I want 3 to 4 quarterbacks on this build. Then the way I look at it, again, is going to be quarterbacks and wide receivers. Those are in this type of a format, a full PPR league like this, where those are the positions that I want to build around first and anchor my team to. So 3 to 4 quarterbacks and 6 to 7 wide receivers would be what I'm looking for here. Now, when it gets to the running back position, I'm going to go ahead and say 4 to 5 is what I'd like to have. And when I say 4 to 5, I'm considering that 4 to 5 running backs that I'm considering kind of in that top 40 to 45 range. They don't necessarily have to be the, full primary bell cow type of running back, or even the primary, 1A on the offense, but someone that I think has enough of a role to where if I had to in a pinch, even if I don't want to rely on them as my starter, they would be someone that I could throw into my lineup as a flex play. Even if it wasn't the most optimal situation, I would be able to kind of rely on this person at least at some point throughout the season, not just some handcuff that all things would have to break right for me to really rely on them overall as a player in my roster. And then also that 40 to 45 range, because the dynasty value that they have kind of makes it to where I could probably trade them and put them into a trade where someone doesn't feel like this is a complete zero on a trade. So when I look at that, I want to have 4 to 5 of those type of running backs. And then for the tight end position, this is a 1.5 tight end premium, so it's not super heavy as far as the tight end premium goes. Realistically for me, I'm probably looking to have 2 tight ends. Like in an optimal team build, I would like to have my tight end that I'm just going to continue to roster and start every single week, and then not really too much as far as depth for the tight end position. If I had a backup that was halfway decent, that'd be great, but I don't really need to have one. I don't want to have in this format though any more than 3, because I don't think most of the tight ends are going to matter that much as far as scoring goes. So again, 2 to 3 tight ends. I'm looking at 4 to 5 solid running back that I think are top 40 to 45 options. 6 to 7 wide receivers, and 3 to 4 quarterbacks. Obviously, you'll have other roster spots, and what I want to do with those is important. But when I'm just looking at the bulk of my team and kind of, is it in position right now? If I'm looking at this team where this is supposed to be a contender, these are the things that I'm looking to do with my team to make sure it's optimally in a position to be contending out of the gates for the season. So for this, is my team aligning with the roster construction that I see here, right? So for 3 to 4 quarterbacks, my team right now has Caleb Williams, it has J.J. McCarthy, it has Dak Prescott, and it has Russell Wilson. And I think really for me, this is a clean, clear check. Like obviously, I think in Superflex, for me, in a format like this, where if you take a look at like Warp, for instance, in this league, the high-end quarterbacks are super important. And truthfully, the elite quarterbacks in this type of a format are going to be, the hammers that can potentially just carry your team. Now, it's not guaranteed to be a lock, and you can definitely get beat by having, a bunch of other really good players and studs at different positions, but the elite quarterback would be awesome. And obviously I don't have that. But at the same point, right, I feel very good about the fact of Caleb Williams, not necessarily how he played last year, but everything in the situation for him, right, with Ben Johnson coming over. The interior of this offensive line could not be any different, and the whole overall offensive line is significantly improved because of it. If you think about the O-line in general, they talk about it's only as strong as the weakest link, and I think the weakest link on this this offensive line is significantly improved. Now, I'm not saying it's one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but I do think it's on the above average side, and that's tremendously different than last year's, pretty pitiful offensive line, I'll say that. So we think about the situation there for Caleb and his ability to hopefully improve under Ben Johnson's, coaching situation. And then you think about, for me, right, Dak Prescott this time last year, someone that I was relying on and thinking of as my, if not my quarterback 1, my quarterback 2, someone who's going to be a consistent starter for my team and that I can just rely on week in and week out. I think what I like about this current situation in front of me, though, is that Dak Prescott right now can definitely slide in as my super flex option. And honestly, I feel pretty good about it. Like, it's not the most appealing thing at this point, but I think he's going to end up giving production that's far superior than what people think of him overall right now in the game of Dynasty. People are pretty down on Dak, And relative to that and what his cost is in Dynasty, I feel pretty good about him being a super flex option if I had to roll him out there week in and week out as long as he was healthy. But then the really nice part is, right, J.J. McCarthy, and listen, I'm still kind of skeptical, frankly, about what it's going to look like and what he's going to be, but the Vikings have clearly, at this point, basically said that it's J.J. McCarthy's team, and with him being attached to Justin Jefferson and T.J. Hockenson now fully healthy off the injury, Jordan Addison, him being, for me, a wild card option, right, where if he's playing well, boom, I throw him in the super flex, great. And if he's not, I kind of see what that situation is going to be, right? I kind of let him develop, so to speak, while I have Dak in my super flex option. And that kind of, with Russell Wilson, as gross as he is, and if he'll even be the starter in New York and for how long, I don't really care. That's my quarterback 4. And as I continue to go down this, let's go through the process here. But I think I have potentially the ability to play around with excess quarterbacks if there was a, trade down the road that met this team's, eye. All right, so as we keep going here, again, I'm looking for 6 to 7 wide receivers that I can rely on. I feel very good about, and I'm probably looking for these receivers to be in that top 40 to 45 range. Like a guy like Jacoby Myers is almost a perfect example. I have plenty of shares of him in different leagues where Jacoby Myers would be towards the, back end of this, where honestly, Jacoby Myers isn't that sexy of a name, right? Nobody feels great about Jacoby Myers in Dynasty, but if he's on my roster, I feel like I could rely on him as a flex option and put him into my lineup at any point, even if it wasn't my desired starter for the week. So, like, he's kind of the idea, somewhere in that ilk is where I would consider my roster construction in this 6 or 7 that I'm looking for. And when I think about that, right, I have Malik Neighbors, Garrett Wilson, JSN, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, and DK Metcalf. I feel like those 6 are absolutely, they're all higher, honestly, in ranges of Jacoby Myers. I feel great about that. I don't have much depth beyond that, right? I had DeAndre Hopkins, who at this point, I'm kind of considering just being dust. But I do feel perfectly fine with that wide receiver core. So then we get to the running back options now. So I have running backs and tight ends. I'm not looking to anchor my team around them, but if my team is in the position to go contend, they're definitely important. And which one I care about more is going to depend on the league format and the scoring, so on and so forth. The running backs in this league, I do care about quite a bit. As far as, if I want to be a high-end contender, I think I do want to have plenty of running backs on my team and probably 1 or 2 of the high-end scoring options because of the way that, again, there's nothing too crazy about the scoring here, but there is a 0.2 points per carry, and with that little bit of a points per carry in this format, I feel like it's even a little bit more weighted to the running back position. So as a contender, I want to make sure that I have, both depth and probably 1 or 2 of the high-end options at the running back position if I can find a way to do so, if I really want to go try to win this league. So I want to have 4 to 5, and right now this is the position that currently on my team just needs work. Truly, the bodies on my bench are just, they're bodies, right? They're dead bodies almost. But what I would consider here, if I'm being honest, I have Gibbs at my running back 1, I have Najee at my running back 2. Sharbs I would consider probably in this mix, right? Charbonnet for me is definitely in the top 40, 45 as far as the running backs go in Dynasty. But that's it. Those are my 3 backs that I could actually count on and rely on. Some people may want to point to Kendre Miller. And listen, where you decide the line is for you as far as which players you're considering on this, that's obviously subjective to you. But for me, I'm not going to put him into this mix at the moment. I'm trying to just really think about my team in an honest manner and be like, okay, which one of these players, if I had to start right now, can I rely on? And as I'm looking about where my team is at the moment, where is it, honestly? Kendre, for me, if he ends up being something nice this year, great. But that would be, to me, a bonus. It's not something I'm relying on in this year. So when I look at the tight end position, right, Mark Andrews and then Michael Mayer are my 2 tight ends. And here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and check the box. And now for you in the way that you want to build around the tight end position, you may not. Mark Andrews, for me, is a discount version of a tight end that I don't feel like probably can be an elite option necessarily anymore. But I feel like he's definitely in the top, 5 to 8. He can certainly be a mid to back end tight end 1. And his cost is kind of reflective of that in Dynasty. I'm not going to be able to move or trade Mark Andrews for much. So I'm just going to kind of let him be parked in my tight end spot. And I'm just relying on him as my tight end week in and week out. Now, Michael Mayer, obviously with Brock Bowers, he's nothing. He's done. It's over for him. But I'm not at this point, right, with Mark Andrews. If something was to happen to him, like Michael Mayer is obviously not going to be it. Sure, I would love to have someone a little bit better on my bench, but I'm not going to really sink any cost into that personally. Now, if something was to happen to Mark Andrews during the season, that's when I would probably address the situation and go ahead and figure out what I want to do. If there's, some team that has 2 or 3 or 4 tight ends that has something at their disposal, maybe I'll go ahead and see what a trade would cost. Figure out the situation of improving my tight end at that point. And if something was to happen to Mark Andrews in the season, I'll have to figure out what that's going to be. But what I don't want to do is sink some dynasty costs, added dynasty costs and value into the tight end room that realistically, outside of a Mark Andrews injury, I'm not going to be starting week in and week out. The other positions, because of the way that this league has, multiple flexes and 3 receivers starting, I feel like there's a better chance that if it breaks right for that player, they could actually make my starting lineup here. I'm probably not going to, especially like in this class, unless I'm in a position of luxury, get one of the really good tight ends in this class. I'm not looking to sink that extra cost into someone I'm just going to park behind Andrews. So I'm going to check the box for my tight end room as far as my roster construction. And overall, when I'm looking at this, right, the reason I want to do this, I'm currently at this point, my roster construction relative to where I want it to be is really good. What I do definitely see is I need depth at the running back position. And truthfully, I like Najee's new situation. I do. But I don't feel the most secure with even Najee in, this hardball offense as my running back too. And definitely Charbonnet. We'll see what happens. But the entire Seattle's organization and what they're going to be starting right now, I don't feel the greatest about. Not to mention Kenneth Walker is obviously still there. So I probably need to add, in my personal estimation, what I would like to do with this running back room is add at least one more starter type of a player, right? Someone that I could rely on as a top maybe 15, 20 back that probably would be going in ahead of Najee Harris. And then I'd probably like to add, someone in that Charbonnet or maybe slightly even further down, some solid depth behind where I now have 4 or 5 solid running backs at the position, and that would fill out my room. But again, when I'm looking at the entire team now, so the running back position definitely needs some improvement. And where am I situated with picks in this league? Well, I moved my 25 first and second to, get the team that I have in front of me now. So I don't have a pick until the 3rd or the 4th round. And I think it would be really easy in a league like this to just say, okay, my roster construction's pretty damn well intact. I like where my team's at. And I'll just let the draft come to me, right? I'll just take probably the best player available in the 3rd and the 4th round. And given the depth of running back in this class, boom, right? I'll just go ahead and shoot my shot in the 3rd and the 4th round, see where those players end up landing. And that'll probably be the team that I go into the season with. And I'm not saying that I can't do that. I very well may do that. I've been trying to make trades in this league like crazy. No activity. We have not had a single trade. We'll eventually probably get some trades, hopefully, in this league and some activity going. But at the moment, no one's biting. So that's fine. But I think while that option is definitely still there, you can leave it there, right? That's a scenario. But for me, let's try to just make that one scenario of what would I like to do with this team and where might this lack of draft picks would I want to get back into the 1st round? And is there a scenario that makes sense for this team to actually see about going ahead and getting into the 1st round? Typically, when you're thinking about it, at least for me, value-wise, if you think about the draft pick cycle, they start, down here, and as the draft's coming up, we're getting close to peak value. So I'm not the most fond typically as far as trading into the rookie draft, really close to the rookie draft, because at this point, everybody's talking about rookie mock drafts, the NFL draft's around the corner, and they're as familiar with the players as you're ever going to be. So, on one hand, I don't want to necessarily get too crazy with this, but one thing I think I do have right now is obviously just top to bottom. What would I like to do with this team? I would love to get an elite quarterback. I think in Superflex, that's kind of a no-brainer. The truth is, though, I've kind of already explored getting a quarterback, a high-end quarterback in this team. And, let's just call it what it is. It's going to cost either too much or straight up they can't be acquired. I went and asked the person about Josh Allen, and he basically told me, I'm going to let him die on my team. Truthfully, I've kind of explored that, and I'm not saying I won't explore it again, but at the moment, the quarterbacks of Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, Dak Prescott kind of probably be, more of what my team's going to be lined to be. I don't feel like necessarily putting a whole bunch of value to trade for one of the quarterbacks that isn't a Lamar Jackson, a Jaden Daniels, a Josh Allen, someone in that mold. I don't feel like it's going to be necessarily worth the cost because of what it is going to cost, given the room that I have. It's not going to be much of an improvement. Now, the one thing I do have on this team is all these wide receivers, and it's not that I wouldn't like to continue to have them. I feel like having those big young three of Neighbors and Garrett Wilson and JSN. Great position to be in, right? But is there a scenario, and this is where, for me, one of the things that I've been thinking about is obviously having those young, exciting wide receivers and the lack of wide receivers in this class. Like, is there a scenario maybe where one of Garrett Wilson or JSN will actually let me get 2 shots at the dartboard, right? So would one of those players let me get, 2 legitimate chances in this really nice loaded running back room? Could I get 2 of them? Like, could I get a mid and a late first in this class for one of those guys? Could I get a mid or even an early second, let's call it, depending on who has what picks? I know there's 2 players in the league, 2 managers that have 2 different first-round picks in this draft, and then there's also obviously multiple that have early seconds. So, like, that's a scenario, I think, for me that is worth exploring. Now, I'm not necessarily sure, one, if someone's going to make that type of a trade. I think realistically it's not asking too much, but it's at least worth going to explore. And I think that's going to be one of the things as the draft continues to push up that I'm going to push the agenda of, because there's plenty of people in this league that don't necessarily have the best wide receiver room built out. And as the NFL draft takes place, we're going to see that outside of Travis Hunter, there's probably not going to be someone that you feel great about as far as the early high-end draft capital and then also their prospect profile. So talking to someone about JSN or Garrett Wilson, no matter what they feel about it, like, that's something they just don't have in their bag. They just don't have at their disposal in the draft. So if they do want to improve that room, that's probably one of the trades that I think I can thread the needle with on this team. So that's going to be one of the things that I'm looking to try to do, and just, kind of in my head, think about what scenarios there are and who has those picks. And at the time of, maybe a week or so before the NFL draft, once I know where all the landing spots are, where the running backs have gone, maybe going ahead and hitting up those players at that point. That's going to be, for me, my biggest takeaway in this league. There's plenty of different scenarios for you and what your team looks like, where you may have a laundry list of things. And whatever those are, right, if you have it on paper and you can think it out, you know what, I would rather have this than I currently have established with my team as far as picks, and you're being realistic about it, go ahead and fire those off, or wait until you see where the landing spots are and the draft actually happens. And then at that point, go ahead and fire those off, because you're not going to get the opportunity once the NFL draft has taken place to probably have the same level of interest as far as trading into or out of the draft. So for me, that's this one team. And I'm going to go ahead and go through one more just so you can see a different scenario here. All right, so when I'm looking at this team, right, this is a lineup start 9. So pretty similar format. We are starting one less player. Now it's a half PPR, and then it is a half tight end premium. So basically 1 point per catch for the tight end position and a half point per reception for all the other positions. No other bonuses or anything else crazy. It's a 4 point per passing touchdown as far as the QBs go. So when I'm looking at this league, right, just to, again, think about the roster construction and what I'd like to optimally have on my team. So for quarterbacks, this is all going to be pretty similar for what it's worth, but I'm looking to have at least 3 quarterbacks in this format, because we're only starting 9, and because of how high the quarterback scoring is in this league relative to only half PPR for the skill players. Quarterbacks really drive this league even a little bit more so than the other league, in my personal estimation, when I'm looking at Warp and playing this league for several years. So I want to make sure I have at least 3 quarterbacks, meaning I have my current quarterback and super flex option, and I have someone that doesn't have to be all that highly valued as far as Dynasty goes, but someone I feel secure about as far as, if an injury was to take place, I can at least slide them into my super flex option and not be bleeding too bad. And I'd love to have 4 if I had the ability to, but I don't necessarily need to. At the wide receiver position, one thing about this relative to the last league was a lineup start 10, and I'm rostering, the whole roster is 32 total players. Now the difference here is you kind of have to pick and choose, and you have to be really careful about how you're roster constructing, in my opinion, because it's only 25 roster spots. And while that may not seem like a big deal to you, for me anyway, that does mean that the waiver wire has a little more intriguing players typically, throughout the season. And because it's only 25 roster spots, I want to make sure I'm being a little bit more diligent about how I'm appropriating those roster spots to the positions I want to have them to. And both of these do have 4 taxi squads and 2 IR spots. But I want to have 6 receivers in this league pretty cleanly for me. So we can start up to 4, right? So it's 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes. I can start 4, but I only have to have 2 in my lineup every single week. So for me, that's where it's going to be 6. Basically, can I have 6 pretty damn good receivers? Like Jacoby Myers again would be where I'd be okay considering that as a player in this 6. But for this league, I'd almost rather, because I'm rostering only 6, pushing that threshold up higher if possible. For me, it's going to be, these are obviously A.J. Brown on my team, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, and Cooper Kupp. Unfortunately, with Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, those values have kind of really cratered. Ayuk's value is also down. DJ Moore's value is down. Marv was down from last year. And A.J. Brown, while was good last year, he's just getting older at this point. People are kind of, as crazy as it is to sound, they're not necessarily as interested in A.J. Brown anymore, considering how he's getting older and the whole Philly offense. So, I like that room quite a bit. It's definitely going to be a check mark. But where I was feeling about this room last year and currently, I feel fine with it, but I don't feel the greatest about it. I felt like I was definitely in the mix with some of the best receivers. My receiving room I felt like was in the mix with the best in the league. And there's definitely 2 teams in the league now that I would say have a better and more secure wide receiver room. It's not the end all be all, but I would like to probably in the scenario here find a way to improve it and get rid of some of the age at some point, or at least replace some of the aging players that are eventually going to be going off my roster. Now at the running back position, we have Saquon Barkley, Chuba Hubbard, Isaiah Pacheco, Rico Dowdle, and Kareem Hunt. And I'll say this is going to check the box, right? 4 to 5 running backs, but this is definitely an area that I would like to improve. And last year I made a trade actually, so going into the season, I had Saquon, I had Chuba Hubbard, and with the injury to Jonathan Brooks, right, him coming off that injury, I felt like Chuba Hubbard for the first part of the year was someone I could rely on. I had Pacheco, I had Devon Achane, and I had Saquon Barkley. And I ended up making a traded away Devon Achane to a guy who's a Miami Dolphins fan, and I got his 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in this class. And part of the reason I made that trade was also because I felt like he had his work cut out for him as far as making the playoffs. So that was part of the reason I ended up making the trade. And also I felt like just variance, if something was to happen with Devon Achane, who missed a lot of time the year prior, just made sense to probably pivot off of that value. And then in the moment of, okay, I can move these picks for a running back that I feel better about in the season. Well, at this point, I would definitely, I say, even with what I know today and how good I feel about the running back class here, I'd probably just go ahead and rather have Achane than those 3 picks. But I can't undo the trade. And Pacheco was the one that got hurt, not Achane. Anyway, all that to say, I definitely have my work cut out for me as far as I like Saquon and I still like Chuba Hubbard, but I want to improve the running back room in this team because, again, it's half PPR and we can start up to 4. So I definitely would like to improve, running back 3, 4, and 5 on this team. And then as far as tight ends go, 2 to 3, I definitely check the boxes here with Njoku, Kyle Pitts, Travis Kelce, and Tucker Kraft. I think it's probably overkill though, realistically. Njoku, even if I said Travis Kelce was done, right? He's going to retire and Taylor Swift, whatever. Even if I just had Njoku, Pitts, and Tucker Kraft, I feel like that's probably overkill here, where again, the tight ends are 1 point per catch. It's basically a regular PPR league for them. It's just not worth carrying all that dynasty value for those guys. So again, my roster construction here is fairly intact and it's a good team. Some of you might be thinking I'm just trying to flex here. Well, these are my 2 lineup shallow leagues. But with this situation here, I feel like while I'm in a good spot, I definitely need to improve my team if I want to try to go win this league again. This was the first time I won this league in 5 or 6 years, finally. So I had the 106, right? I made that trade for Devon Achane I told you about. The 112 and the 206. I ended up moving that 3rd round pick. So those are my 3 picks going into this. Now, again, it'd be probably pretty easy to just sit there at the 106 and the 112 and just say, all right, take, who's ever there as far as, is it Trevion Henderson? Is it Quinshon Judkins? Does Caleb Johnson end up getting, a nice draft pick and I get him at the 112, or does he end up getting closer to the 106? I probably realistically, just thinking about it, am in a good spot to just sit and draft 3 running backs and try to put them towards my stable of RBs. But also in this league, right? This is again going to come down to you and knowing your league. For me in this league, because it's a lineup start 9, it's always about consolidating up. Everybody would like to have the more premier players, and that's ultimately going to come down to the format and how important those guys are as far as winning games for your dynasty team. So for me, in this league, I'm perfectly fine probably to sit there and do that. But the 2 things I'm going to be exploring is, 1, do these draft picks 106, 112, and 206, can I move them? Again, thinking about the same situation as the other team, but where I'm at now, I'm not going to be in the position, I don't think, unless the team comes out and that drafts Travis Hunter and says we're going to use him as a full-time receiver like I'm probably not at the 106 going to be drafting someone that I feel like really changes the dynamic of my overall receiver group all that much and that I can rely on as a starter. So with that being said, right, my first thing I'm probably going to be doing is, okay, 106 in Rome, kind of similar in value. Just go ahead and just test the waters here. Like 106 to the person that owns Rome, what does that do? Like start the conversations there. I think it's fair enough offer to just start some conversations, see what the interest is. If he says no, like what is the difference between the 106 and Rome to make this trade happen? I'd probably be willing to go to the 106 and the 206, to be completely honest with you. Go ahead and at that point move those picks into Rome, and then draft at the 112, best running back available. I feel like that would be more optimal than just drafting all three of the running backs, because I really believe in the situation that is coming for Rome Odunze, and I think he's set to explode. But again, maybe that doesn't happen. And then also, maybe there's a scenario where I can move up from the 106 to the 102. Now, I don't have to do that right now, but I feel really good that Omarion Hampton is going to be a first-round running back at this point. Now, I can wait and just make sure that happens, but the person at 102 happens to be in a rebuild and is about acquiring more picks, not just necessarily taking the person at 102, especially typically anyway. Rebuilders don't want to just put a whole bunch of value into the running back position when they're not really that close to contending. So the 106 and the 206, what would that go ahead and get me all the way up to the 102? Now, we could be looking hindsight 2020, and it's where maybe Travion Henderson actually sneaks into the first round, or Quinshon Judkins, or whoever it may be, right? But the point is, at that point, I'll kind of have some ideas formulated where I'll send these out, and now I can go ahead and try to move up and make this team more optimal for what I'm trying to do with it with the draft picks I have. Obviously, I could always just sit there and make the picks as they are, but for me, I think trying to either tier up where I'm going from the 106 higher, or like maybe I can even go the 112 and 206 and use some other player or future pick to get the 102. You never know. But can I basically entice the person that has the 102? And what would it cost to get a guy like Rome, who's a little bit, supposedly anyway, suppressed in value relative to some of the other players in this really high-end 24 class? So those are overall just some things I'm thinking about doing with these two teams. The whole idea, again, here is to get a really good handle and be more familiar and honest with yourself about your team going into these rookie drafts. And then once you have that, right, what are some options and realistic trade scenarios that you can at least think out before we go into the NFL draft? Because once the rookie draft takes place, basically whether people are, thinking about making trades right now or not, you can't control that. But basically once the rookie draft happens, people are going to start sending out offers. It just kind of comes naturally. If you want to get something done, I think having an idea and being a little more prepped for what's coming to you and who has the picks and what the scenarios are is only going to play into benefiting you, right? I don't think I've ever heard of anybody being like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have spent so much time on that, because who knows? It's just going to end up being everyone's going to draft a player that they're at, and the draft's going to be over. It's always, at least in my cases, it's going to be at least more beneficial to understand what's going on in your league at the moment, where your team's at, and what you would like to do with your team. Whether the trades get done or not, you can't fully control that, but I'm always looking to improve my team and just think about it from the standpoint of where I'm at and where my league mates are. And if I can find a way to make a trade that's going to be seemingly beneficial to both sides, again, those are going to be something that's always going to be moving the needle in my favor to making more trades down the line. And that's the way I want to be doing my leagues and kind of operating with my team moving forward. All right, so anyway, that's all I got for today's video. Quick and to the point, right? Basically, the whole process for me, it's not all that complicated, but just thinking about prepping for my specific league, where I'm at, where I want to go, what I have as far as my current roster, the players and the positions that I have, and what I need to get to be comfortable with my team in contention. And then once I have where I'm at and where I want to go, what's it going to take to get where I want to go? And when I think about where my draft picks are in this class, what would I optimally like to do? Obviously, I could always just sit there and take the picks, but is there some scenario where potentially moving these picks at this point, where the picks at this point, right, the value is getting higher? If I have the picks, does it make sense to move them to somebody else? Is there a scenario that's going to benefit my team more than just drafting the picks? Or vice versa, right? If you don't have picks, you've kind of already traded away the value there. Is it actually worth going ahead and seeing if you can get back into the first and second round? And if so, how would you go about doing that? Let me know down in the comments. One, did you like this video? Did you like the format? And then two, if you did, whether you did or not, What are you looking at? What is the scenario for you with your team? And what do you need to do and improve about your team? And should you move the picks that you have or don't have? I'll see you back here, same time, same place next week on the BDGE Dynasty channel. I'm out of here. Peace.